My very first summer job in college was washing cars at the local Ford dealership. When someone would come in and purchase a new car, I would take all the stickers off of it, give it a wash, and then give it back to the customers. There's just something about washing cars that I really enjoy. Maybe it's taking something dirty and making it clean, but honestly probably not, because I don't feel the same way about dishes. I think what it really is that I'm just a car guy deep down inside. Whenever I first moved here to Dubai 12 years ago, I would walk around the city and I would see Ferraris and Lamborghinis, just stuff, cars that I had seen only in TVs and in magazines, and I was seeing it every day. And as I was going around, it was the middle of summer, it was 45 degrees C, I was walking looking for a taxi, and I quickly decided that I needed to go and buy a car. And although I couldn't afford a Ferrari, I wanted to get a sports car. So I went out and got a sports car, a two-door sports car. It had a 5.7 liter V8 engine, a great sounding exhaust. Honestly, it looked like a Hot Wheels car. It was awesome, and I had big plans for it. I was gonna put twin turbos on it. I was gonna put a louder exhaust. I was gonna put bigger brakes. And then I met a girl, and everything changed. All the money I had saved up for twin turbos went towards purchasing an engagement ring. And then a few years go by, we get married, and I have to sell the car because we're having a baby boy. I had to sell my sports car and buy an SUV. Well, I'm currently driving a 2008 Honda Pilot. And you might be asking, well, Jeremy, if you're a car guy, why are you driving that? Well, that's a very valid question. But this car was a gift from God. Well, prior to owning this Honda, we actually had an Audi SUV. And it was great for a lot of reasons, but it was bad for a lot of reasons as well. It's very luxurious on the inside. It rode really nicely. It was quite spacious, but it was terribly unreliable. In fact, out of the last 4 months that we owned it, it broke down on us 3 times, and we had to get it towed to our mechanic. And so we knew that we were going to have to sell it and buy a different car. So we began to pray, God, what car do you have for us? And I started looking on Dubizzle each week. And I narrowed it down to a few different types of cars. And then we went out to the local used car market here in Dubai and test drove a few cars. We actually even decided on one that we thought we were going to buy. And the salesperson was quite convincing. He said, Jeremy, just go ahead and take the car, take it back home, put your car seats in it, drive it around for the day, and if for any reason, if you don't want it, just bring it back, no questions asked. And so I was like, okay, let's go check it out. And it was a nice car, honestly. But at the end, I just didn't have a peace about it. I didn't have a peace of God, from God, saying that this is the car that we should buy. So the next day, I took it back to the salesperson and said that we didn't want it. And he was not happy. So he started praying again. God, what do you have for us? A month went by, and then actually another month went by. And eventually Jerry sent us a message. Jerry's a friend of ours, saying that her friend from Emirates was retiring and wanted to sell their car. And he was a pilot, so he didn't drive this car very much. It was a 10-year-old car, but it only had 48,000 kilometers on it. So it was still quite new. And he had had a bad experience where someone had came to buy it and then backed out at the last minute. So he decided, I'm just going to sell this car way cheaply to someone who needs a car. And so me and Ella stepped in, and he sold us this 2008 Honda Pilot with very low mileage for 12,000 dirhams, about $3,300. And while most people will consider that a steal, I consider it a gift from God. When you get a gift from someone, you want to take care of it. That's why I go and get it washed. That's why I check the oil. I keep track of when I changed it last and get it changed when it's needed. You keep track of things that are important to you, kind of like your keys and your phone and your wallet. I keep track of birthdays and anniversaries, and one thing that we should all keep track of is our money. We've been asking the question, if our money could talk, what would it say? And we've been finding out that it would say a lot of the things that Jesus would say. In week 1, we said that if your money could talk, it might say this: I can add meaning to your life, but I'm not the meaning of life. We talked about the fact that money becomes most meaningful when it becomes a means to an end that's not you. That when we discover what we want our lives to become, a means to our money will normally follow. So at the end of the first week, we all asked this question: to what ends do we want our lives to be a means? This is a question that at some level or some point in our life we should all wrestle with, because we all want to have a meaningful life, and it can't be all about you and me. The second thing we said that money might say is this: I'm a better servant than master. In fact, your self-control actually determines which of us gets control and which of us stays in control. Because money woes generally begin with character issues, not money problems. That money woes often begin with character rather than our income. Well, wrapping up today, I want to talk about the third thing that our money might say if our money were to begin to talk. And once again, it parallels exactly what Jesus said when he did talk about money and possessions. And here's what our money might tell us: I'm easy to keep up with, but I'm difficult to catch up with. I'm easy to keep up with, but I'm difficult to catch up with. Keep up, or you'll be playing catch up. And the truth is, and you're not going to like me for saying this, there really is no excuse for not knowing where your money has been going. There's really not a good excuse for not knowing where your money went. When it comes to money, not love and not relationships and not a lot of other things, but when it comes to money, we should never find ourselves saying, well, it seems to me, or I'm not sure, or well, that can't possibly be right. And the reason we should never say these things as it relates to our finances is because a certain amount comes in and then we send it places, right? A certain amount comes in, you know how much comes in, or at least you should know how much comes in. And then you or your husband or your wife, you all send it places, right? We should all be knowing where our money is going. We should all know this. There should be no mystery about where your money is going. There's mystery when it comes to love and romance, for sure. And there's a lot of mystery when it comes to raising kids. There's a lot of mystery when they become middle schoolers and high schoolers. There's certainly a lot of mystery around decisions that they're making. But when it comes to knowing where our money went, there should be absolutely no mystery at all. And the problem is when you lose track of where it's going, it takes over. It begins to take over our emotions. And you know how you feel, right? We all know how we feel because we've all been there before. You feel out of control, don't you? You just feel like something has taken over and you're trying to catch up. So if your money started talking and was addressing this particular issue, your money may say this: look, I'm easy to track, but if you lose track of me, you'll lose your peace of mind. And if you lose your peace of mind for too long, you may feel like you're losing your mind. And I don't want that for you. If you've ever felt that way before, I don't want you to ever feel that way again. We've all been going through so many emotions lately with the pandemic. And if we ever have to go through something like the pandemic again, knowing where your money is going takes the guesswork out of where to cut back. You see, it's easy to know where to cut back when you know where all your money is going. It's easy to know where to cut down when you have to cut down. This is not just a pandemic thing, because this happens to most people during normal times. Maybe when you go from 2 incomes to 1, or you lose a job. You move from one location to another, Or maybe your kid gets into a great college that costs a lot of money. We all have seasons in life where we need to cut back. Keeping track of your finances makes you more cautious in how you spend your money. It's kind of like keeping track of everything that you eat. So you know that if you want to eat that delicious 800-calorie dessert, you probably are not going to be able to eat dinner. Keeping track of things, whether that be food or money, it slows down the decision-making process. It forces you to make better decisions that you might dislike in the short term, but in the long term, you'll be so glad that you made that decision. So do you know where your money is going? Do you know which area of your finances you could cut back on if you needed to? Well, I want to give you a little challenge, okay? We gave you a challenge last week, and we want to give you a challenge this week as well. The challenge is this: just for 2 months, I want to challenge you to figure out a way to document your spending for 2 months. Just 2 months. And then I want you to spy on your money. I want you to follow it. I want you to see where it's going, what it's doing. Create a Google Doc and share it with your husband or your wife, or maybe not, or share it with a roommate. Share it with a friend, but it's good to share it. And the thing is, this is so easy. There's so much free software. There are so many apps that are out there. You can try one out called Spending Tracker. It's one that Sarah from our church uses. And I like the name of the one that Janice uses as well. It's called YNAB. It stands for You Need a Budget. There's so many options out there. It's easy to see exactly how much you spend, and it's easy to track. And I want you to do that for just 2 months. And then me and Ella, we're going to be doing this together with you. And in the end, we are all going to be better for it. I know you must be thinking, this isn't much of a sermon, but it's certainly practical. Well, this is practical advice, but if you are a Christian, this goes way beyond practical and way beyond helpful, because Jesus actually taught specifically as to why this is such a big deal. Well, Jesus, 2,000 years ago, knew your money and your possession is where the rubber meets the road in terms of your ultimate devotion. It's so much easier to give your heart to Jesus than it is your money to Jesus. So when Jesus started talking about where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. And the ultimate litmus test of your devotion to God is what you do with your money. And a person can't have more than one master. You either are going to serve God or the devil. No, that's not what he said. He said God or money. And why is that? Well, it's because he knew that. He knew that. He says, so over and over again, he says, come on, you're going to trust me with your eternity, your health, your children, your marriage, your singleness, your joblessness, your opportunities. Why would you hold back when it comes to your money and possessions? It just doesn't make any sense. And what does Jesus say about money and possessions? Well, he was so clear. He said this: it's not even yours. It belongs to my Father in heaven. You're not an owner. You're a manager. Well, Matthew, one of Jesus' closest disciples, he explains it for us. Matthew would follow Jesus around town, and he would either write down what Jesus said himself, or since Matthew was wealthy, he may have had someone write it down for him. So Matthew is telling us what Jesus said. And Jesus, he's telling us a parable. And if you don't know what a parable is, it's a made-up story that Jesus told to make a point. And in each parable that Jesus told, there was always a character or a point that represented God. And there was always a character or a point that represented the audience he was speaking to. Or in this case, it's us. So check it out. This is what Matthew tells us in Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. Again, because Jesus has been talking about something like this for many, many times. It, or the value system of God that he wants lived out here on the earth. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. And if you read this whole parable, it becomes clear that the wealthy man who is entrusting his wealth to the servants is God, and the servants to whom the wealth is entrusted is me, and it's you. It's the followers of Jesus, or the potential followers of Jesus. But here's the question, and this is not a trick question. What percentage of the man who bestowed his wealth to the servants, what percentage of the wealth belonged to the man? All of it, right? Exactly, 100%. And what percentage belonged to the servants? 0%, right? It was all the master's. And he said, I'm going to give it to you. And if you read this parable, it's kind of interesting. He gives one guy 5 bags of something of value, and another person 2 bags of something of value, and the other guy got 1 bag. And he said, now while I'm gone, I expect you to do with my wealth what I would do with my wealth. And when I get back, I hope to have a return on my money. I want you to manage it the way that you think I would. And then when I get back, then I want to know what kind of return you got. So I want you to work on a return so that when I return, I get a return on my wealth. And if you remember the parable, or if you want to read it, you should definitely read the entire thing later. 2 of them do really well. They go and basically double their master's money. And then one of them, he doesn't do so well. He buries it. But the point of the parable is this. Do you remember the difference? Do you remember what made the difference in the outcome of the story? Do you remember what made the difference when the master, he returned and asked them to give an account? The issue was not about the amount that they were asked to manage. The issue was what they did with what they were asked to manage. The point of the parable that Jesus is making is that 100% of it belonged to the master and 0% of it belonged to the servants. They were managers. They were not owners. Well, here's the great news about that idea of us being managers of God's money. No matter how much money you have or how much money you make, you should never feel guilty about that. Because money managers don't feel guilty. It's not their wealth. Money managers feel responsible and accountable for it. Jesus could not have been any clearer. As Christians, the reason you should keep track of where your money is going, it's not your money. We should know where our master's money is going. And the more you have, the closer attention you should pay to that money of where it's going. So create a system. Just do this for 2 months. Create a system where you monitor where your money goes, and then sit down and look at it. And if you don't like what you're seeing, adjust. How you and how we manage money speaks volumes about whose and who we are. You know this already. It's not because of what you do with your money that convinces you of this. It's people you have met along the way, because you've met some very generous people. You may have met some very generous people who had a little, and you may have met some generous people who had it somewhere in the middle, and you may have met some generous people who had a lot. And when you saw that, and you saw what they did with their home, when you saw how generous they were with their car, when you saw how generous they were with their possessions, you walked away from those encounters or conversations thinking, wow, that person is the real deal. And I can't hear any of their prayers. I don't know about their secret habits. I don't know what happens behind closed doors. I don't know how they're parenting their children. I don't know what's going through their mind while they're at church. I don't even know their church attendance habits. I don't know any of that, but I know that they're the real deal because of how they handle their money and possessions. And Jesus was so brilliant. He knew the very same thing. How you manage your money says so much about who and whose you are. So come on, pay attention. If you pay attention, you will live better and you'll love better. You'll definitely be more generous, and you'll have much less fear, and you'll have far more purpose. If our money could actually talk, and it would tell us, I think it would begin with telling us, hey, I can add meaning to your life, but I'm not the meaning of life. Our money would tell us, I'm a better servant than I am a master. But ultimately, it's your self-control that determines which of us gets in control. Our money would tell us, hey, I'm actually pretty easy to keep up with, but I'm difficult to catch up with. And you will stress yourself out if you lose track of me. And then ultimately, reflecting on the words and the teachings of Jesus throughout his ministry, what you choose to do with me speaks volumes about who and whose you are. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much that you loved us, that you gave. And you didn't give a percentage, you gave it all. So give us eyes to see, give us ears to hear, Father. For the man or the woman who is struggling financially, and they hear this and they are asking, what does this mean for me? Just give them eyes to see. For the family in the middle, just give them eyes to see. And for the person who has so much extra that at times they don't know what to do with it, just give them eyes to see, and then give them the courage. Give us the courage to respond. As a church, help us to say our lives are in your hands, and we trust it all. We trust it all to you. Our dreams and all of our plans, we trust it all. We trust it all to you. In Jesus' name.